find CJ Spiller for something other than sitting on the fucking bench.
31 other passes that should have been intercepted.
So that's why I have David Johnson on my board higher.
If you're doing a live draft, wait till you're drunk to draft this guy. We welcome you to the Fifth Down.
What up, Fifth Downers? This is the Fifth Down Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Johnny Slokes. I got my partner in crime, K-Mill.
Hey.
Yeah, we decided that we are going to do a Wildcard Weekend show. We're going to talk about the Wildcard matchup. On top of that, though, we're also going to give a little bit of foresight into some of the players going into next year. It's a little bit of a little early prediction about their ADPs. So there's a lot of interesting players that are kind of came out of nowhere, so it'd be kind of interesting to talk about them a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
What do you got going on this weekend?
No plans, finally. It feels like the first weekend in forever I can actually just sit down and, do nothing, which is great because all I want to do is do nothing and watch football.
Well, neither one of us have really a dog in this fight. Both of our teams are out of the playoffs. Who are you pulling for?
I kind of have a soft spot for Pittsburgh, even though I really don't want them to win, because they already have 6 rings. But I don't want New England to win, And if I had to pick a team, I'll pick my second favorite team in the NFL, and that's the Detroit Lions. But I have a feeling they're not going to go very far, but it's always nice to pull for them.
Is it okay to say for a 3 seed to be a dark horse?
Yeah, I think you could say that probably because I guess some people.
Because honestly, I think that Pittsburgh's my dark horse to get to the Super Bowl. I really do. Think about the landscape of the AFC this year. You got Tom Brady, you got Ben Roethlisberger. No one's really scared of Alex Smith and maybe their defense, but the rest of the teams have backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, I know. And, that's the thing, too, is a lot of people have asked me about Kansas City, where do I see them at? And I really don't see them as a threat. They made a lot of noise in the postseason, and I think they can grind out a lot of games, kind of like what Denver did last year. But I think ultimately, when it comes down to it, I don't think they can challenge New England like Denver did last year. So I think that's the big issue.
Well, wouldn't if Pittsburgh were to win, they'd have to play Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, New England would have to play
Pittsburgh. I would love to see Kansas City versus Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I would love to see that game too. I still think though, man, Pittsburgh's just got too many weapons on offense, and they're just such an exciting team.
This is actually a rumor that I've heard, and it's about a playoff team. I heard that Brock I almost said his name. Brock Asswiper was forced upon Bill O'Brien by the GM Rick Smith. O'Brien never wanted Brock as a quarterback, but he was forced upon him. And I guess since the quarterback hasn't produced very well, they're blaming O'Brien, and he might actually get fired.
Yeah, well, I think that he's safe because he made the playoffs this year. That's just my prediction. But I did hear reports out of training camp that neither the offensive coordinator for the Texans, the coach, or the owner had met with Brock Osweiler before they signed him. They were worried about getting a quarterback, and I think the owner forced everybody's hands. Bob McNair, he was like, "Get this guy. I don't care how much you have to pay. Get him. We have a lot of cap room." Because the Super Bowl's in Houston this year, he thought that it would be a home run pick, and it didn't seem like it was. So now they're dealing with that right now.
One of the Houston beat writers said the GM's seen Brock is everything that you could want in a quarterback, and the beat writer was like, "Yeah, he's everything you want in a quarterback until he steps on the field."
That's pretty funny because that's pretty true.
Did you also hear that the Jets are thinking about moving Darrelle Revis over to safety? What do you think about that? Do you think it's a good move, or do you think that maybe he should just think about hanging it up?
Well, I can see this situation going one of two ways. I hear Darrelle Revis still wants to play, so I think his only option is to move to safety. But I'm more worried about are the Jets going to want to pay his $6 million salary guaranteed next year? That to me is
Well, that's too much for a safety. He's going to have to renegotiate.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And he said he's open to renegotiating and moving to safety. He said he wants to stay on the Jets, and he'll even talk about a reduced salary. So I think if he does that and he plays ball with the Jets and he gives them a very team-friendly deal, I think they will move him to safety. But if he's like, no, fuck that, I signed this contract, they'll just cut him.
Speaking of restructuring deals, AP says he's willing to take a pay cut to stay with the Vikings.
Yeah,
Do you think that would work?
I think the Vikings would be open to it, but I think they have to be worried about two things: his injury history, coming off of a fairly significant knee injury this year, and then also the fact that his playing time last year, or not playing time, but his play significantly decreased last year. He averaged, I think, something like a 1.6 yards per carry. I mean, when he was healthy, he wasn't playing well. So if I'm the Vikings, I would look towards free agency.
Well, on AP's side, it makes sense for him to want to take a pay cut, not only just to stay in Minnesota, but just to stay in the league in general, because no team is going to want him with that contract. Even if he does take a pay cut, they can always trade him once he takes the pay cut.
Yeah,
I'd love
exactly.
I'd love to see him go to a team like the Patriots. It'd be like a Corey Dillon 2.0 experiment. That'd be I think he could do well there. I think any running back could be plugged in over there.
I mean, you got to think about it too. This is just my opinion on it. The Vikings, their offensive line was atrocious this year. I mean, that's another factor that's playing into it, I think. And I mean, Sam Bradford performed well enough under the circumstances, but that offensive line didn't help either of them.
If you actually look at Sam Bradford's end of the year stats, they don't really look that bad. I mean, he has 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I think he had to set an NFL record for completion percentage. But then when you seen him on TV, didn't you feel a little underwhelmed?
Yeah, I did when I'm watching him on TV. But you look at the overall stats for the season, and you're like, wow, he actually had a really good year. His interception to touchdown ratio was great. Completion percentage was great. He had all the intangibles, and I think he really took a step forward, finally showing some of that promise that made him a first overall pick way back in the day. Now, I think he's cemented himself as a starter going into next year. I think Teddy Bridgewater, number one, won't be healthy enough.
Actually, the coach came out and said that Sam Bradford has earned the right to be the starter next year, which kind of actually surprised me. I thought maybe he would say, he's earned the right to compete for the job, but no, he straight up said he has earned the right to be the starter next year. So that spells a big dark cloud over top of Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, sorry, Teddy. But, I think the other thing is, you look at it, I think that Sam Bradford would be willing to negotiate a long-term extension with the Vikings, too. I think that he's their long-term quarterback going forward. He showed a lot of stuff this year. I hate the guy, but, he played well enough, and he plays good in that system.
So I'm going to fire through some of these news and notes pretty quick.
All right.
San Francisco, they interviewed Seattle's offensive line coach Tom Cable for head coaching position. The Washington Redskins reportedly let go of their entire defensive staff. Good, because it was terrible. It's funny is about remember us talking about Tyrod Taylor's injury incentive?
Yeah.
He's I think he had surgery yesterday to repair a hernia, and if he is not able to pass a physical by March 11th, he'll get that money. Which, what? It makes sense. It makes sense for him to search for something wrong with him. I want to get that money too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame Tyrod Taylor one bit. And at that point, once the salary is fully guaranteed, the Bills are going to have to eat it, and they're going to be like, well, I guess Tyrod Taylor is our starter next year. And that's what I figured would be the case anyways. So,
And I don't know how relevant this next news is, but Jared Cook is expected to re-sign with the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers is actually given a lot of credit for during their little run the table run they've been having, but I don't know. I kind of feel like he's too up and down for me.
Yeah, I think he's more of a rotational piece at tight end at best, because you got Richard Rodgers, swapping in and out. So I don't trust that.
It's funny. Charles Tillman, he's retired, but apparently he said he reached out to Aaron Rodgers. He's like, "I'm ready to run the tables. Do y'all need a CB?"
Oh, I think it's.
You know what? I mean, that would be nice, but that's like a big slap to the face to any Chicago Bear fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of like, what the fuck? It's like when
I'd like to see him get a Super Bowl ring, though.
Yeah, and he definitely deserves one. He's had a nice career.
All right. A little bit of station identification. We're part of the BS Podcast Network. You can there's not only just fantasy football there. They also have all kinds of. It seems to me there's like a lot of weird podcasts about different shit. I've listened to a couple of them. They're pretty entertaining and funny, to say the least. You can find all their podcasts on www.bspodcastnetwork.com. If you want to look for us on there, we're on the gold tier. Another great way to find our shows. You can also find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spreaker. You can find us on Stitcher. I finally got that shit fixed. So please leave us a rate and review on our shows. Let's jump into some of these wild card matchups. What do you want to start with, NFC or AFC?
Let's start with the AFC, and let's start with the shit bowl. Let's start with the Texans and the Raiders.
All right. Yeah, this is going to be great because the winner of this game is actually going to be the loser, because the winner of this game, this is assuming that Pittsburgh is going to win. I'm assuming Pittsburgh is going to win. But the winner of this game gets to go to New England for a live execution on TV in the hands of Tom Brady. I don't know, how much do you actually win by winning this game?
You really don't. I mean, we saw how the Texans were outplayed on both sides of the ball by the Patriots. I think it was week 3. That was with like a third-string quarterback, wasn't it? Yeah, that was like Jacoby Brissett. And Brock Osweiler looked like more of a third string than Jacoby Brissett did.
All right, let's. I want you to give the keys to winning for Houston. I'll give the keys for winning for Oakland.
All right.
How does Houston win this game?
Houston wins this game by leaning on the run game, because they have a very deep run game. They're going to lean on that run game, and they want to bleed that clock all game. I think that's actually the key to the game for both teams in this situation. But Houston needs to bleed the clock. They need to be very responsible with the football. Brock Osweiler has to do something he hasn't been very good at all year, and not, force turnovers or make turnovers happen. And I think that the other reason why Houston wins this game is because they have the stronger defense. Their run defense is better than Oakland's, and their secondary is better than Oakland's too. So I think that's why Houston pulls it out on top, is lead the clock, not making any turnovers, and play good defense on the other side of the ball.
It is important to note that I did not see Lamar Miller on the injury report, so obviously he's not too banged up anymore. That's because I do agree he's going to be a big. Yeah, he's going to be a big part of that offense, because you're not going to want to rely on Osweiler to win.
Well, and the other factor is, too, you look behind him, Alfred Blues plays pretty good when he's seen snaps. Akeem Hunt's been explosive at times. Grimes has seen some work in there, too. So this run game for Houston doesn't necessarily end with Lamar Miller. It obviously has a big boost, but it doesn't end with him.
Speaking of Lamar Miller, obviously this year he was going in the first round in a lot of drafts. Occasionally he'd slip into the second round. Where do you see him going into 2017 at this point?
Man, I don't know. I think that he goes second or third round still. I definitely don't think he's going to go first, though.
Maybe I'm a little bit sour on him, because I am leaning more toward the third round. I think he's a third round running back. Honestly, I think he should have been a third round running back this year. But you got a lot of hype. You got a lot of hype. You know what I mean? It boosted them up.
We both jumped on the hype train for Lamar Miller this year, let's face it.
Yeah, I did big time.
Yeah, I just do. I was stuck his cock.
Yeah, but I see him more as a third rounder right now, just because that offense is still limited, and it'd be hard for him to get that touchdown total, and that's what you want out of one of those top tier running backs.
let me put it to you this way. As long as Brock Osweiler is the quarterback of the Texans, it's going to be hard for me to trust any Texans on offense.
Do you think that he's going to be the starter next year? I mean, I tend to lean that he is going to be the starter, but I don't think his job security is, all there. I think that he could very well be benched midway through the season if he continues to struggle.
Oh, I think that it's definitely going to be. They're going to go into. He's going to be the tentative starter. They're going to go in and they're going to have every opportunity to install a quarterback in front of him. Like they're going to have him compete heavily at training camp. But I see Brock Osweiler as the favorite to be the starter next year. But that doesn't mean much. He doesn't have any job security.
As bad as Brock has been, I don't necessarily put it all on him because Texans, they have a pretty complicated playbook. And, it's really hard for someone to just come in and grasp right away. Maybe we'll see. I do think we'll see some progression next year.
Yeah, I think so too. And the other thing that really pisses me off about Brock Osweiler, I don't really fault him for the heavy playbook because he did bring up a good point. But he just seemed inaccurate, and all season, and his downfield throws were just not good. Like he didn't have the confidence to bomb it and trust that his guy was going to come down with it. He always second guessed himself, and that would get him, forcing turnovers and stuff. And it's just, that's not good football.
Because I seen some stat on him about him targeting Hopkins down the field, and his completion percentage was like less than 30% on the year.
I believe it because I watched all those games, and I'm like, how is Hopkins not catching him? And they would always sail right over his head, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
Speaking of Hopkins, do you think that he's going to get peppered in this game? Or do you think you're going to see more of the same with Osweiler?
I mean, the only time he's been useful this year, or trustworthy, I guess you could say, and even then I use that lightly, it was when Tom Savage was at quarterback. With Brock Osweiler at the helm, I really just I can't trust, DeAndre Hopkins. I really just can't even peg what I think his yardage total is going to be. I feel like it's going to be a typical, with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, 4 for 40, type of shit.
I mean, you obviously don't see Hopkins as a first rounder next year, right?
Absolutely not.
Is he a second rounder?
I mean, if Brock Osweiler is a starter, I sure as hell wouldn't take him in the second round, but, maybe
is he a third rounder?
He's really high. I would even say maybe he's a third rounder. I'd say probably if I had to put him somewhere, I'd put him in the third round.
I mean, because he was another guy that, because of what he did, in 2015, it really boosted up his stock. And he could be a guy that you could probably get on the cheap next year. I'm not saying that he's going to fall that low, but I mean, I think that's probably where I have him right. I feel comfortable taking probably like the top end of the third.
Yeah, I think that we both are unanimous on that. Like I really.
And I don't know if you'll be able to get him there though. I think he will go before that, which means I probably won't have him. But it's too early to say. This is just early speculation. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, exactly.
I know obviously fantasy football is over, but some people still play DFS. I think Fedorovich could be a good option here because, Osweiler, that's pretty much all he could do is dump it off to that guy. But I think going into next year, you're going to see this guy fade away. He seems like he's better suited to be a blocker. And I think you'll see an emergence of Ryan Griffin. I think Ryan Griffin's the better receiving threat out of the two.
I think so, too, and a lot of, critics would agree with you because, Fedorovich caught everybody by surprise. And I think that the reason he caught fire was because he has a rare ability, and that's to catch a pass from Brock Osweiler. That's what his rare ability is. So I think that he is a strong DFS play, this week if you do play DFS. Just strictly because he's the only one that can have a productive game with Brock Osweiler at quarterback.
So you think that Houston's going to win because their defense is pretty strong from top to bottom, and you think they're going to rely on the run game? I'm going to talk about Oakland a little bit.
All right.
Here's how Oakland wins. Here's how Oakland wins this game. Oakland's going to win this game. I think they're going to rely on that offensive line: Latavius Murray, Jalen Richard, DeAndre Washington. That's a pretty nice trio of running backs they have back there behind that line. They're going to have to definitely rely on that. And you're still going to have to see Amari Cooper and Crabtree shoulder some of that load. And, maybe Connor Cook is actually better than McGloin. We haven't really seen him. He got limited time against Denver, but that's not really fair to assess him against Denver. They're one of the best pass defenses in the league. I'm not saying that Houston's bad by any means, because they're pretty tough as well. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Oakland. But what you're going to have to see is, Khalil Mack, he can be dominant and straight up take over games at times. So you're definitely going to see him as the game goes on. If they're still in it, he warms up as the game goes on. He becomes more deadly. You're going to see him wreak some havoc in the backfield. Another guy that's been coming up big as of late is Bruce Irvin. He has 7 sacks on the season. I think that those two can make a nice deadly pass combo in this game, and it could really be disruptive for Brock Osweiler because, sometimes it seems like he holds on to the ball too long. So we'll see. That's really going to be their key, though, is their pass rush because, it's been getting a little bit stronger as of late, and it seems like their defense always comes up with, like, the clutch turnovers. I've watched a lot of Oakland games this year, and that's one thing I've noticed is they have a lot of clutch turnovers. Their defense overall is not very good, but they do come up with some nice interceptions like late in games especially.
Yeah, they're going to definitely have to turn the tide. I definitely see this being a close game. I think the thing that you said about Connor Cook is right on. We haven't seen much of him. But the thing is, he doesn't have to necessarily win the game for Oakland. He has to make key plays at key times. That's what he needs.
He just needs to not turn the ball over.
Yeah, exactly. But he also needs to make those throws when they need to be made. He needs to convert on key third downs. You need to see that third down conversion rating decently high.
I will say if Clowney gets up in his face, it could be bad news, though, because I'm sure you watched the Oakland-Denver game. He seemed to get really rattled under pressure and kind of like throw the ball early and off target, which we've kind of seen that in college too. So
yeah, he does get a little rattled under pressure.
Let's just assume for a second that Latavius Murray, he stays with Oakland. Do you think that he did a whole lot to improve his stock from last year? Last year he's like a 4th, 5th round pick, most likely a 5th round pick. Do you see him going sooner than that? Because I kind of feel like people are still not bought on him. I feel like he'll probably get drafted like right around the same area.
I think so too, and honestly, I maybe even later than he did this year. I wouldn't say he drops too far, but at the same time, he got 2 competent backs. DeAndre Washington wasn't too bad this year, and Jalen Richard really showed that he had some flash. So I think that a lot of people are going to be looking at it in the draft. Especially guys that play fantasy every year, and they're going to be like, well, there's some contention there. This isn't like Jay Ajayi in Miami who's kind of run away with the job. This is something that is very heavily contested.
What I noticed? He was getting like 20 touches a game for a good stretch of the season, like towards like the back end of the season. But like the last 3 games is when he really started losing a lot of snaps, a lot of carries. The part of me wants to say that that's just who Oakland is. Another.
No, I think that's saying no. I think that's who Jack Del Rio is, because I think that Jack Del Rio has kind of phased him out of the game a little bit. Because that's another thing that scares me about Latavius Murray. Say you draft him, I feel like Jack Del Rio, if Latavius Murray's not doing anything, he'll be real quick to pull the plug on him.
But I just feel like because he was actually doing pretty good when he was getting the touches. But maybe what I was referring to is maybe they were splitting up the carries these last like 2 or 3 games of the season to maybe give him some rest coming into the playoffs, especially once Derek Carr went down. I think maybe they're just giving him some rest, and then maybe they're going to use him more in the playoffs. So I don't know. It remains to be seen. I obviously don't. I'm lukewarm on it.
Yeah.
Derek Carr. I know he obviously, he broke his leg.
Dude, where's my car?
But based off of how he played, yeah, the car is in the shop. But based on how he played this year, where do you see him going in terms of quarterbacks? Because obviously he was a late round pick this year.
Yeah, I actually see Derek Carr as more of I wouldn't necessarily say that, he moved heaven and earth this year, but he had a very strong year. And I think that, take this very lightly, he was the Cam Newton of this year. A guy that had a really strong season and that everybody's going to be jumping on in the draft. But at the same time, I don't see him going as high as Cam Newton, because where Cam Newton went this.
Oh no, nowhere near.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's what I'm saying it's a horrible comparison. But at the same time, I'm saying that he's a guy that a lot of people are he's going to be a popular pick for a lot of people. I can't really gauge his value right now, but I do think that he definitely moved the needle on himself. People are going to really be looking at him.
This year he was like the 12th or 13th quarterback taken off the board, and he finished right around like 7 or 8. So he actually he outperformed his ADP by a little bit. I think that I could see him falling around like maybe the 7th round. That sounds about fair.
Yeah, I think that's about.
That's kind of like my sweet spot for quarterbacks. But I don't know if I would draft him necessarily next year. This year was like the perfect year to have him, just because during the fantasy season he only played Denver once.
And because he was like the perfect value, all year. He was just like you got him, with the late pick, so it wasn't a loss, and he played really well for where you got him.
Yeah, because that's the thing with quarterbacks. You don't want to get the hot guy. Not saying he's like on fire or anything, but you want to look for that. You want to look for that later guy and get some value out of him.
I mean, he is good looking.
And that's not going to be him next year. You know what I mean?
I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, you want to get that guy that people are a little low on, and get a value at quarterback. Like this year, I got Matt Stafford. Next year, I'm looking at a guy like not to get too off topic, but like Kirk Cousins, who people kind of maybe got a little lukewarm at the end of the season with. I think he's a guy that's going to have a great rebound year, whether he's with Washington or, wherever. But the point is, you got to look at those value guys.
He kind of seems like a guy I would probably maybe still draft him, but I would look to still find that late round value and you can pair them together. Because, you got to face it, he has Amari Cooper and he has Crabtree. Those are very nice weapons to have. And, they get to play San Diego twice. They get to play, like, I don't know, hopefully the AFC South or something.
Hopefully defenses.
Cooper and Crabtree are probably one of the best combos in the league. I think Crabtree obviously was a very nice value next year. I think that he's definitely going to move up in the draft. Probably like fifth round. I say like 5th round. As bad as Cooper was during the stretch, I think off of name value alone, he's still going to remain like that 3rd, 2nd round value, and that's a shame.
I think that both of these receivers are actually going to disappoint next year. That's just my personal opinion. Number one, I think Crabtree, he had a year for the ages for his career. You know what I mean? He had a great year, but I think that he's gonna go way too high. He got hot, this year. And I think he's going to be a hot commodity next year's draft. But, I think people are, he's going to burn a lot of people because he's not going to perform to the same standard that he did this year. And I think he's going to go way too high for where he's going to actually end up, performing at. And I think same with Amari Cooper. Like, you made a great point. I think that name brand's going to carry him, into the top rounds. But at the same time, I think that he really doesn't belong there. He really, he didn't perform. He's a guy that I'm going to personally avoid next year.
You know what I think is Clive Wolford. I think he's going to be a sleeper next year at tight end. I think next year going to be his 3rd year, and that's usually a breakout year for tight ends. Because I think a lot of people were just a year too early on him.
Yeah, that's what I said too. People asked me about him, and I said I think he's about a year off, and I tend to think I'm still right on that. And I call him one of my sleepers next year too. So that's actually funny that we agree on that. But, yeah, I think that Wolford's going to be a huge sleeper. I think his role is only going to expand in that offense.
All right. Final score. Oakland versus Houston. What do you think the score is going to be?
I think it's going to be 27-24. Houston takes it.
All right. I'm going to go on the opposite spectrum. It's going to be 20-17 Oakland. And they're going to get it because of a late turnover.
I mean, hey, that wouldn't be wrong. There's been a lot of narrative this year with Oakland doing that, turnovers late in games. But I think Houston's going to get it. I think Osweiler's going to play it well enough. He's not going to turn the ball over, and I think this defense for Houston is going to come up with some big plays.
All right, let's go over Miami, they're going on the road against Pittsburgh. Honestly, I don't see Miami winning this game. I mean, I got something interesting about Miami. They've only played 2 games this year where the temperature was below 45 degrees. And when they play Pittsburgh, it's predicted to be at 9 degrees. Warm weather team playing in Pittsburgh, no bueno. Pittsburgh, they got Big Ben, Bell, and Brown all fully healthy at home. I don't see them losing.
Yeah, I don't either. Also to add on that, Ladarius Green's, healthy too. He's been practicing in full all week. So I think Pittsburgh is at this point in the year, they're the healthiest they've been all year. And they're going into a team with Miami who has a backup quarterback, a running back who down the stretch has struggled for the most part. I'm the same way. I don't see Miami winning this game.
What do you see Ladarius Green's role being in this game? I mean, he is going to be healthy.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. I'm actually glad that you kind of put me on the spot here. But, I figure he's going to I don't think he's going to move heaven and earth. But I see him, doing something around 6 for 60, maybe a touchdown, maybe not. I don't know. It's going to be hard to see, but he is healthy, and it adds another role to that offense, and another weapon, so to speak.
He might be another guy that people might sleep on next year going into the draft because of, his injuries this year. And, people might just forget about him. Yeah,
I think that he could definitely represent something big. The reason I avoided him in every draft is because, he just wasn't healthy. He wasn't going to start week 1, so I'm like, why am I going to waste a bench spot on you if you're not going to start,
In terms of this game, though, I think Pittsburgh is going to really rely on Le'Veon Bell. Even Le'Veon Bell came out and said, in order for our offense to be successful, we need to run the ball, and we need to get these chunk gains, sustain long drives, keep our defense off the field. When we do that, we're unstoppable, and I agree. When their offense is doing that, they're very tough to beat.
I agree. When you get Le'Veon Bell going, when the bell is dinging, that's when your offense is moving. And Le'Veon Bell, he does it all. Really, look at him. You look at what he did. He missed 3 games this season, and look at what he did in that span. It's just incredible, And Miami is, they've improved down the stretch as a defense. But Le'Veon Bell, man, he's just something else. I think that he is going to be, I don't necessarily say that he's going to win the game for Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh has many avenues to win this game, but he's going to be a key part of it.
Le'Veon Bell is actually the first player in NFL history to average 100 yards rushing and 50 yards receiving, which I found that kind of ironic because I know. But then I remembered that, Marshall Faulk had 1,000 receiving yards. But the key point is he averaged over 100 yards rushing and 50 yards receiving.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. You think about that. That's 150 yards a game from scrimmage. That's just incredible.
I think over during their winning streak, he's averaged 187 yards a game from the scrimmage.
Yeah. I know, and that's just
that's insane.
I love it.
Bell or Brown, do you think either one of these guys will be a number 1 overall pick next year? Obviously David Johnson's in the discussion, maybe even Zeke. But who would you take number 1 overall between these two?
If you had to go off of this year alone, you have to say Bell. You have to say Bell. Antonio Brown is Antonio Brown. But, we're not talking about the Antonio Brown of last year. We're talking about the Antonio Brown of this year. And Le'Veon Bell, what he's able to do this year, especially coming off the suspension, is no question. He has to be in the conversation.
Well, what I think about Antonio Brown? I think Antonio Brown misses Martavius Bryant immensely. Because, you got to think, he was really the receiver. They didn't really have, another guy they could go towards. I know they had Sammy Coates. They tried that experiment. It failed. Eli Rogers, he's nice, but, he's not as dynamic as Montavious Bryant. If that guy can stay off the dope and he comes back, it's going to definitely help Antonio Brown because I mean, you got to think Antonio Brown had a down season, and he still was really great.
Yeah, I know, and that's actually funny. What we've come to expect from Antonio Brown, we expect him to move heaven and earth, and
it's like, oh, he didn't have 1,500 yards. What a disappointment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're looking at that, but you really look at it, and you're like, man, he only eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving for like the X straight season. You're just like, fuck, that's not good.
I mean, he didn't lead the league in receptions. That's horseshit.
Yeah.
He was still second, but
yeah, I mean, but yeah, you got to put Le'Veon Bell. I think honestly, man, first overall, you got to look at two names in particular. You got to look at Le'Veon Bell and you got to look at David Johnson for next year.
I mean, I know which way you're going to lean, and I know your reasoning behind it, and it's sound logic. Yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to go with David Johnson, but I mean that's a discussion for later on in the off season.
Yeah.
Big Ben, I think he was a bit underwhelming this year too, and I think it goes back to the point, his receiving targets. He had Antonio Brown. He didn't have Ladarius Green for most of the year. He didn't have Montavious Bryant at all. I mean, once he gets Montavious Bryant back, I think that'll help his numbers because you got to figure he had 4,200 yards or something like that. You won't see 4,800 yards unless he gets that legitimate consistent deep threat back.
Yeah, exactly. He has one guy that can stretch the field right now in Antonio Brown, but at the same time, when he has two legitimate receiving threats, it makes teams have to game plan around two of them, and right now they only have to game plan around one of them. So obviously, Antonio Brown's going to be receiving double coverage, up and down and left and right of the field. So he can't always go to Antonio Brown is what I'm trying to say here. And he doesn't really have a lot of options, like you said, Sammy Coates failed. Eli Rogers, he's nice here and there, but he's not that. Ladarius Green has struggled with health all season, so, what do you do in that situation?
See, if I had to peg Big Ben for next year, I'd probably put him somewhere in the 6th, 7th round range. And I think that's actually a pretty decent value for Big Ben. I like him better there than when he was 5th or 6th round, you know what I mean?
Let me put it this way. If Martavis Bryant can stay out the dope and come back next year, I think that's a great value for Big Ben. I think that he's still going to come back next year and he's going to be stronger than ever. And I think if he can get him there, I think I would definitely take him there.
Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Big Ben or Derek Carr?
Big Ben.
Okay, we're on the same page.
All right.
Let's go over to the other side of the ball. How in the world does Miami win this game?
Well,
what is their keys?
If I had to pick a way for Miami to win this game, and I don't have a lot because everything is working against them at this point, but you're going to put me at the downhill position here. They have to control the clock. They have to feed Jay Ajayi the ball, and they will win or lose this game by his hands. Basically, he cannot fumble the ball. Yeah. He needs to get over 20-plus carries this game, and he needs to do something with them. He can't be, Jay Ajayi where we saw, later in the season where he kind of fell off and was averaging 3.2 yards per carry. He's got to really pick it up, and he's got to be Mr. Everything in this game. Because and the other thing is too, Matt Moore has to be smart with the football. If they win this game, he's going to have to throw a deep bomb to Kenny Stills, get that quick 7 on the board. But he's got to be really safe with that ball. He's got to throw for about 300 plus yards. He's got to do everything too. This is hard for me to say. And Miami's defense has to play like the studs that they've been at some point in the season, but they have to put it all together. They have to stop Le'Veon Bell, and they have to cover the shit out of Antonio Brown. Leave that underneath stuff to Eli Rogers, for some part, Sammy Coates, open, and leave Ladarius Green, If you have to put 2 men on Antonio Brown, you got to do it. I don't know. There's very few ways for Miami to win this game.
Are we too quick to judge or write Miami off in this one? Because Miami actually dominated Pittsburgh during the regular season. I think they beat them 30-6 or something like that. Granted, I think Big Ben got hurt in that game, but Jay Ajayi, he had almost 250 yards rushing in that game.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's my point. If Miami wants to win this game, they have to not commit any turnovers, and J.H.I. has to be fucking God himself.
Well, I really don't think they have much of an option. I think they have to rely on that run game because, you know, that's obviously a weak spot for Pittsburgh. And, you know, they did a really good job running the ball last time. And their defensive line can be dominant at times. And they're going to have to be dominant in this one. My thing is, though, who else outside of Cameron Wake is going to get some pressure on this quarterback?
I think you got to go with Kiko Alonso, man. You know, at times this season he was really dominant, and we've seen his career really be rejuvenated this year, you know, in Miami. So I think that you got to go with Kiko Alonso.
Yeah, because I mean, they're definitely gonna need their defensive line to show up in this one to have any hopes.
Yeah, exactly. And they got to play well in cold weather. They got to show teams, you know, that they can play in any condition.
I do see though Jarvis Landry. I see him being like a security blanket for Matt Moore. I think he'll get a lot of short receptions, and I think he'll be like an extension of the run game, even if the run game is working. And obviously, I think they're gonna take some downfield shots to Parker and Stills. Stills has been really good down the stretch, actually, especially with the deep ball. I could definitely see him scoring a deep touchdown in this one.
And that's why I said it, too. You know, you saw it, you know, since Matt Moore's taken over quarterback, he's been really accurate with those deep balls to Kenny Stills, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
That's the one thing I do like about Matt Moore. He is not afraid to take shots down the field. You know, there's been some Miami fans actually said that he's every bit as good as Tannehill.
You know, take this for what it's worth, but I think he's better than Tannehill. I would rather have Matt Moore as starting quarterback than Ryan Tannehill.
I mean, he's a seasoned vet. He was actually a pretty competent player over in Carolina and Miami at certain points. So, I mean, it's not unheard of.
No, definitely not.
J.J. though, he's going to be really interesting this offseason. Like, I think that he's going to go way too high for me to want to draft. I seen a early mock draft, and he got drafted in the second round.
Yeah, you know, that's pretty high for him. But you got to think, you know, you look at workloads, and you sit there and you look at it, and what other running backs in the league get 20-plus carries a game, or, you know, pretty much guaranteed? Because Adam Gase has gone out and said that he's never going away from Ajayi, you know. So he's obviously the focal point of that offense. So, I mean, if he's going in the second round, I don't necessarily think that's way too high for me. I think that that's actually pretty good because you look at the amount of running backs that get 20-plus a game, you know, by themselves, and there's really only two handfuls of them.
You know, not to get too off topic, but I heard, like, Adam Gase learned that he was actually passed over for a head coaching position by the 49ers. And he's like, wow, that kind of surprises me.
Yeah, I know. I bet he's glad that he didn't take that job.
Yeah, and Jarvis Landry, I think that, you know, this year people might be a little bit sour on him. I could see him still being like a fourth-round pick, though.
I can see that, too.
All right, final score. Where do you have this game?
Oh, man. It's taking everything in my existence to not make this like a blowout game. But if I had to put it somewhere, I would say it's going to be 24-10 Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to give a similar score. I think that Pittsburgh is going to win 27-17.
Yeah, so we're both on the same page that Pittsburgh will win by multiple scores.
Yeah, a little bit of station identification. We're part of the BS Podcast Network. You can there's not only just fantasy football there. They also have all kinds of. It seems to me there's like a lot of weird podcasts about different shit. I've listened to a couple of them. They're pretty entertaining and funny, to say the least. You can find all their podcasts on www.bspodcastnetwork.com. If you want to look for us on there, we're on the gold tier. Another great way to find our shows. You can also find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spreaker. You can find us on Stitcher. I finally got that shit fixed. So please leave us a rate and review on our shows. All right, let's go over to the NFC. Let's start off with the 3 and the 6 seed. The Detroit Lions, they really didn't do themselves any favors last week, losing to the Green Bay Packers. Now they have to go on the road to Seattle, where I think they've only been defeated at home one time this year. How do you see this game playing? First off, is there any way you see Detroit winning this game?
Well, here's my thing. Okay, so Detroit is my second favorite team, so I'm going to try to put my homerness aside here for a second, and I will tell you firsthand that I think that Seattle will win this game. I see Seattle winning this game. However, I really, really, really want Detroit to win, not only because I hate Seattle, but because I like the Lions. They're my second favorite team. Now, I don't think that's likely, but they got to play damn near perfect ball on both sides of the ball to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see Detroit winning this game is Stafford, his needs to be a nice game manager. He doesn't have to do anything. I don't think he has to do anything spectacular. Just don't turn the ball over. And I think they could be okay, but they need to find a run game. It seems like the last 2 weeks they were running the ball really nicely with Zenner, and then the second half comes and they completely abandon the run. And I was talking to my father about this, especially as the Packers. You know, Zach Zenner, he had 16 carries in the first half, and in the second half he only had 4. I think he had 16 carries for 62 yards. He had another 35 yards receiving, and he also scored a touchdown, and then they completely stopped using them. It's like they kicked the ball off to Green Bay. Green Bay had a long 10-minute drive, and then Detroit 3 and out, and then Green Bay got it again, and you know the rest of the story. They just at that point, they completely went away. So they should have ran the ball, give their defense some rest, because during their winning streak, that's how they're winning games. Because let's not fool anybody, Detroit's defense is fucking terrible. One of the worst defenses in the league. So what Detroit was doing is they were masking that bad defense with ball control, which is not really what Detroit wants to do. Detroit wanted to play high tempo, hurry up offense, because that's what Stafford's really good at, but they weren't able to do that, and that kind of hindered their offense a little bit, but at least it kept the defense off the field.
Well, yeah, and you said it perfectly. The receivers weren't able to get open downfield, and Stafford couldn't play the game that he wanted to play. And, let's also mention the fact that, Matt Stafford, in the case of an injury, has been 1-3 in games. I'm talking about the Lions in general. But, Matt Stafford has kind of struggled, with that injury, to that ligament to his throwing hand. But you're right. I think the key to this game is they have to get Zach Zenner early involved, and pretty much all game, just get him involved. Because you're right. They were having success running the ball, and they went away from it. Because that's the only way they're going to be able to mask this bad defense is by ball control and getting key first downs and converting on third down. They can't just play this fucking Matt Stafford trot back and air it out game, because Seattle's going to pick them apart.
Yeah, I think the key matchup to me in this game, Detroit's defensive line is 31st in the league in sacks, and it's going against a really bad offensive line. That's going to be the key to this game. Who's going to win that trench war? Because, Ziggy Ansah, he's finally healthy. DeAndre Levy's finally getting healthy. I know they got Ryder, who has 7-8 sacks on the season. They need to find a way to get some pressure. Because, I don't know if you noticed this, but Russell Wilson, his mobility hasn't been as good this year. And I think he's still playing hurt. I really do.
I think he's playing hurt, too. I definitely agree. And, he was talking I'm going to shed this knee brace and this and that. He wants to talk a big game. But, I honestly think that he's still playing hurt, just like you said. And another thing that's very noteworthy in this game is Detroit against playoff teams this year is 0-4. So
they have 0 wins.
They have 0 wins against playoff teams this year. So, and Seattle is obviously a playoff team. So that's another thing I see working against the Detroit Lions team. I don't think that they have the fortitude to win this game. However, I'm really hoping that they do. Just so I can, talk shit. I'm in the Seattle area right now. I want to talk some shit to Seahawks fans. Let's fucking go, baby.
Another interesting point about this game is Detroit, since week 5, has played every single game indoors except for when they played the Giants at MetLife. And when they play Seattle, there's a 50% chance of rain, which I think there's always a 50% chance of rain in Seattle. But
yeah,
I mean, normally when it rains in Seattle, it's not heavy rain. It's usually like a light drizzle. But I think that if it's a light drizzle, that's enough to get that ball wet, and maybe it affects Stafford's grip with that finger brace. It'll be really interesting to see the ball security from Stafford.
Yeah, it is, because he's wearing a glove too, so you got to keep an eye on that as well.
Where do you see Stafford going next year in the draft? Because he seems like he was like a 9th, 10th round quarterback this year. I do think he'll move up a little bit, but I don't think he really blew anybody away either.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. I got him as a nice late round this year. As far as quarterbacks go, I was like, I was waiting on a quarterback. That should be your strategy in season-long leagues. But yeah, I don't think he moved the needle too much. But let's not kid ourselves. He was, I believe, as far as quarterbacks go, and I'm not looking at stats right now, but I believe he was the 5th best quarterback, this year as far as the yards go. He's a quarterback that plays in an offense that lets him throw 50 times a game at some point. So he definitely has his value.
24 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. I think that's his career low in interceptions. That's really nice to see. And I think he completed 65% of his passes. I think that's also a career best. So that's really nice to see. It was, I think a lot of people were kind of counting this offense out without Calvin Johnson. But, what I noticed is now they're running a lot of shorter little intermediate crossing routes. And that's kind of suits Stafford better instead of just, trying to force the ball over to Calvin Johnson a lot of the time. He's able to be a little bit more unpredictable with the ball and work the ball with different receivers. It kind of helps, but overall they actually had less offensive production throughout the season. But that had a lot to do with the ball control, too, because they didn't even have as many drives as they had last year.
Well, yeah, and I think that the other big thing to mention is, I think that Stafford's going to probably fly under the radar next year. So that's kind of a good thing for you guys. Got him this year. You could probably get him next year, and really a lot of people are going to overlook him.
He's going to fall into that sweet spot where I like to draft quarterbacks, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how it plays out. I think Tate will probably go somewhere close to where he went last year, like 4th, 5th round. I see Marvin Jones taking the hit, but I think Tate did enough to retain his value.
Yeah, I believe so. He had a really good.
He looked like shit at the beginning of the season, though. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, he did. He had 4 or 5 games where he was just non-existent, and he picked it up towards the end of the year. Though you got to give him credit. He picked it up. He started getting back to his normal Golden Tate self, and you got to know what you're getting with Golden Tate. I think he's probably – I have him somewhere, in the 4th round in, my mock draft, where I feel comfortable drafting him, you know what I mean?
I think of one more key component to this game, and I only say this because Detroit has been awful in the red zone. They just seem like that's one thing – I think that's one part of the game where they really do miss Calvin Johnson, is having that legit, red zone threat. It seems like a lot of times they get into the red zone and they just stall and have to settle for a field goal. And it's because they don't really have a legit red zone threat on that team. They don't. I think, honestly, they don't target Eric Ebron enough in the red zone. I think they're going to have to get this guy involved when they get into the red zone in this game if they want to score touchdowns instead of field goals.
Very good point. I think that you're great for –
You're not going to beat Seattle kicking field goals.
No, you're not. You're not going to beat them point blank. However, I do think in this game Seattle's going to struggle to put up points too. I mean, Detroit's defense is weak, but, man, I really don't think that, nearly the worst pass rush in the league can definitely get to Russell Wilson with, their awful offensive line.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty nice transition to the other side of the ball. We brought it up a little bit. Russell Wilson, he's going to remove the knee brace. How do you see that affecting the game? Do you think he's going to be more mobile?
I don't know, but I think that it's more of like a ploy for him. He's like, it's the playoffs. We're playing for everything at this point. We're playing for our lives. So I'm just gonna, risk injury and everything to go after it because he's been playing with it, due to a precaution, just keeping himself healthy the rest of the season. But now he's got this to play for, and that's it. So I think that he's going to come
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just thinking, I don't know too much about it because I don't know if he's still hurt or not. I'm suspecting he still is, but if he's fully healthy and he removes that knee brace, it could add a lot of speed because that knee brace does slow him down. So that could be a pretty effective, especially if they get the run game going and they start doing these rollouts and play action passes. That could affect the game a lot. But if he's still injured and he removes that knee brace, that's a potential for an injury. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously,
the nightmare scenario is going to be the nightmare scenario is going to be if Seattle wins this game, but then Russell Wilson gets hurt. I mean, then it's like they're just lambs for the slaughter in the next game.
Obviously, Russell Wilson did not retain his value this year. I think he finished. I think he finished as a fringe quarterback one. That's not where you're expecting to finish at. Do you think that he's still going to be in like that fifth round conversation though?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know with Russell Wilson now, but you definitely where you got him this year. You're not like you don't want him to get him there next year. He didn't perform that well. So
do you think that Seattle will be able to run the ball in this game?
That's going to be the key. That's going to be the key for Seattle. That's going to be the point of where, is Detroit going to make this a close game, or is it going to be like, not necessarily a blowout, but Seattle's going to win by multiple scores type of game? Because if Detroit can stop Seattle's run game, which hasn't been very, threatening to this point in the season, I think this could be a very close game. So it's going to really, I think the whole game for Seattle depends on this run game. They got to get that established.
Because, it seems like one of those games where, like, Seattle doesn't have a very good offensive line, but, I mean, I could still see them being able to run the ball a little bit. Rolls has been a bit underwhelming, but I think they'll be able to do something there.
A bit underwhelming? Come on, man.
CJ Prosise, I heard, if they can make it past Detroit, he could return next week. So that's pretty interesting. I really like that young kid. Do you see CJ Prosise as like a potential keeper?
Yeah, I mean, you got him late. I mean, he could definitely be a keeper. There's a lot of candidates.
Yeah, you probably picked him up off the waiver wire. Yeah,
more than likely you did. Yeah, so if that's the case, then I'd say definitely keeper because you're only losing a last round pick.
Because Pete Carroll even came out and said, I really like this guy. I could see him being the starter next year.
I think he could, because Thomas Rawls hasn't done enough when healthy to put a stranglehold in the job. So I think at worst for CJ Prosise, it's like a contested backfield going into training camp.
The problem I see with Thomas Rawls is the same problem that I see with Robert Kelly. Neither one of those guys catch any passes. They just don't get utilized as pass catchers. It's like when they're in, it's like, oh, looks like they're running the ball,
Yeah, exactly.
I think, though, the keys for Seattle on offense, I mean, I did say they were going to have to get the run game going a little bit. But, Detroit, their slot corner was one of the worst in the league. He was it Quadre Diggs, whatever the fuck his name is. He got placed in IR. His backup, who couldn't even start over him, Asa Brown, he got placed in IR. They're going to have an undrafted rookie in the slot, which means this guy couldn't start over neither one of those guys, and he's going to be responsible for guarding Doug Baldwin. I could see Doug Baldwin just absolutely going bananas in this game. Honestly, if you're playing DFS, I would look to definitely jump on Doug Baldwin or Jimmy Graham because I think both of those guys are going to be big parts of this offense, and I think they're going to thrash the Lions that way. If it's a blowout, it's because of those two.
It could very well be. I mean, you bring up a very good point. Quadre Diggs has not been good, nearly all season.
Well, he's on IR now.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean is that he hasn't done a good job, and now you got an undrafted free agent going in there. I mean, come on, man. Come on. Doug Baldwin, I don't think he's the most polished receiver in the league, but at the same time, he is an NFL receiver, so he's going to do some damage there.
Teams targeting the Lions in the slot has completed over 90% of their passes, and their quarterback rating has been like 115 or something like that. They've given up, I think, the most yards and the most touchdowns to the slot this year.
That's impressive. I can't believe you even came up with that stat.
I didn't come up with that stat. I seen it. If I can remember his name, I would give him credit, but I can't. I don't have it off the top of my head right now. But
that guy then.
No, he's just basically just telling you how bad their pass defense can be. I think Doug Baldwin could be actually a potential value next year. Because, I mean, he definitely – I don't think he returned his fourth-round value this year. And I think he might fall a little bit. And I think, he didn't necessarily play terrible. I think he had over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. If you can get him like the 5th or 6th round, I think that's nice.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
I kind of see Jimmy Graham in that same range. I could see Jimmy Graham. It was nice seeing him come back off that terrible injury. Who's seen that coming? I think he could be around like a 5th, 6th round tight end, which I don't really like taking tight ends that early, but I think that's probably where he ends up.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would feel comfortable taking.
All right, final score in this one. I'm going with Seattle. I'm picking them to win 28-16. They'll be close, and then they start to pull away late.
Just for the sake of argument, I am going to say the opposite. I'm going to pick Detroit in this game. And I don't want to hear shit. Next time we do a show, I don't want to hear shit on Twitter or anything like that because I fucking picked them. But I'm going to do it just for the sake of argument. And I'm going to say that Detroit pulls this out on a late field goal from Matt Prater. And it's going to be 23-20.
Do you want to make a bet? Do you want to make a bet on this one?
Man, I don't want to bet cash on this one. Yeah.
No, not cash. We don't have to bet cash. We could do like a dare bet.
All right. We'll do a dare bet, but let's keep it professional. All right.
All right. Well, what do you propose it be?
That's tough. All right. If Detroit wins this game, I want you to drink 3 straight shots of 151. Anything. It just has to be 151, and you have to do the show.
Wait, so if Detroit wins, I have to do 151 during the show?
You have to do 3 straight shots of 151 to start the show.
All right. I mean, if I get a little bit tipsy, you'll understand.
I'll understand. It's strong liquor, my friend.
I think the last time I had 151, I think I was only like 17 years old. I only had 1 shot, and I thought, oh, man, this tastes like gasoline. But Jamie's brother, he chugged it out of a beer bong. Let's just say he was throwing up in someone's backyard, and their mom came out. And he was like, oh, I had really bad pizza.
You know what? No. And here's my other continuation of that bet. If Detroit wins, you cannot have a chaser, or you can only have a chaser after you've finished all 3 shots. You got to go boom, 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 then you can chase it. You can't do anything in between. None of that pussy shit.
Well, I've been looking for an excuse to whip out my candy cane shot glass. It's made out of candy cane.
Oh, shit. And then you have to eat the candy canes afterwards.
Oh, man. That's going to be rough on my teeth, bro. All right, I'll accept that bet.
All right, but what are you going to do to me if you win?
I want to see you do the worm properly this time, because last time during the Super Bowl you didn't do it. You didn't do it correctly.
I did. Okay, man. I drank an entire bottle of Jack Daniels. What do you want me to do? All right, what do you want me to do?
I want you to correct your deficiency.
Okay, and I can do a pretty badass worm when I'm not wasted out of my goddamn mind because my team won the Super Bowl. Okay.
You look like a 2x4 just plopping on the ground, or like I don't even know how to explain it. All right, let's go over to our final matchup of the day. We got the New York Giants going on the road against the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know that a lot of people are thinking that this could be a team that could make similar runs like 2007 and 2011, the Giants, because of their outstanding defense they have. Who do you think is going to win this game, and tell me why?
Oh, man, this is tough. Okay, I am going to say that Green Bay wins this game, and this is the toughest game to predict because this is a game where I can see both teams winning. Like, it's just not, this is the closest game by any means out of all of these.
This is going to be the best game out of all 4 games, I think.
It will, yeah, and that's my prediction too. Green Bay's at home. I see Green Bay pulling this out at home, and I'll tell you why. Ty Montgomery is going to go gangbusters, and we're going to see everybody in this pass offense for Green Bay get involved, including Randall Cobb, who's just been a ghost, the last half of the season. I think he gets involved too. I think this is a game where, they're going to live or die by Aaron Rodgers, and he's got to perform this game. He's got to be doing his run-the-table bullshit. And Green Bay's defense has to make plays when plays need to be made. I heard Demarius Randall, one of their corners, is going to be healthy for this game, so that is nothing but health. Clay Matthews is obviously still playing a little bit injured, but I think that Green Bay is going to play well enough to win this game.
I have to agree. I do think Green Bay is going to win this one at home. It's really hard to go against their winning streak that they have going right now. I know a lot of people have given me flack because I said that, Aaron Rodgers shouldn't get MVP. I mean, I'm not saying that he had a bad season by any means. He's been outstanding. I think the interesting thing, though, is I think it is going to come down to Aaron Rodgers. I think that Green Bay will end up throwing the ball 50 times. It's going to be the thing I want to look at is how is Green Bay's offensive line going to hold against – because, the Giants, they like to blitz a lot. And Green Bay has one of the best pass-blocking offensive lines in the league. So I think that if the Giants try to blitz them a lot, that could come back to bite them, especially, if maybe if Davante Adams gets a quick release or, Ty Montgomery coming out of the backfield. Ty Montgomery might have a great game coming out of the backfield catching passes. I could definitely see that.
Yeah,
and I think even if they don't necessarily pick up the blitz cleanly, Aaron Rodgers has the ability to roll out of the pocket and make plays outside of the pocket. He likes to hold on to the ball a lot, and that's when he's most deadly. So I don't know if you want to see too many blitzes coming from the Giants. They do elect, though, to play like 8 or 9 defenders in zone coverage and have them drop back and try to take away everything over top. That's when you could see either like Ty Montgomery or Christine Michael run the ball. So it's definitely going to be a really nice chess match, in my opinion. It's really interesting to see how that plays out.
I think you bring up a great point, especially with the minute that pocket collapses, Aaron Rodgers is on his feet, he's going. He doesn't throw too many passes away. He's really opportunistic. If he doesn't see it does something immediately downfield and he sees a running lane, he's going to take it. So he's going to do a lot of damage with those feet. So I definitely think that's a great point that you brought up.
Yeah, I think that where the Green Bay is going to try to attack through the secondary, there's 2 spots really. I think that Aaron Rodgers might try to attack the rookie Eli Apple if he's got, and he most likely might guard Davante Adams. I think that'd be a spot that he might try to pick on the rookie. That'd be a smart thing to do in the playoffs. And I do think he'll get Jared Cook going in this game because that is a spot where the Giants have kind of struggled as a defender tight end. And Jared Cook, he's fast as fuck for a tight end. He can get down the field, and if he doesn't drop the ball, he's going to make a nice play, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up because I have written him off completely. So
I think he could be the X factor.
He could definitely be the X factor, but my X factor and what I say is going to winner break or make this game for Green Bay is going to be Aaron Rodgers and Ty Montgomery. I think those are the 2 real X factors. Those are going to be the guys.
I like that one too.
They're really going to be the bread and butter of this offense.
Yeah, I like that. I like that call too. I do think that he will look to get involved in the passing game, so I really like that. Speaking of Ty Montgomery, this is going to be a really interesting guy going into the next season in terms of, like, redraft leagues of where he's going to go in terms of ADP. Because it's kind of hard to put a spot on him at this point, don't you think?
I mean, at this point, if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'm thinking one thing is for certain. We're going to get Eddie Lacy hit free agency. Like, I think that Green Bay is confident enough in James Starks and Ty Montgomery going forward that Lacy is going to be an afterthought. He's going to hit free agency, and he's going to go to the fucking Colts probably. I don't know. But
I mean, I could see the way I see Ty Montgomery is more of a change of pace receiving back. Because, he's only gotten 10 or more rushes, I think, like once or twice all year. I think they feel a little bit reluctant to just let him loose that way. But I definitely think he could be a nice piece. I don't know, because I can't really exactly peg a spot for him in terms of ADP. But one thing's for certain. They're definitely not going to go into next year with just Montgomery and Christine Michael. I don't know if they're going to bring Eddie Lacy back. But one thing's for certain, I'm not just going to roll with Montgomery and Christine Michael. They're definitely going to bring somebody else in if it's not Eddie Lee.
Yeah, I think that they're going to bring in some free agency help, and I think they're going to have a nice competition for it. But at the same token, I think that Ty Montgomery stays heavily involved in this offense. I think he's at least proven himself. I think he's even talked about changing his number to a running back's number. So I think he's going to
be a running back, that's for sure.
That's for sure. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be a change of pace. I think that, maybe Green Bay brings in, I think unless they bring in a big-name free agent at running back, they're going to roll with Montgomery next year.
I can get on board with that. How effective do you see Janoris Jenkins guarding Jordy Nelson? That'll also be a nice, interesting matchup because I think at times they're both going to be able to make plays on each other.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see. I think it's going to be probably one of the other make it or break it. There's just so many good matchups in this game. But I think it's going to be another good one. But, Jordy Nelson has proven pretty much, matchup proof really all season. Even in the games where he's had low yardage totals, he's had a touchdown to back it up, So he
just seems to be getting peppered lately, too.
Right, exactly. Aaron Rodgers is always looking at Jordy Nelson's direction firsthand,
I mean, Jordy Nelson, though, going into next year, he's going to be another year older. Where do you see him being drafted at? I mean, I think he was like a second-round pick, maybe a first-round pick in some leagues. I think most people probably draft him in the second round. Where do you see him going next year?
I think next year he's going to be, at best a second-rounder and then at worst a third-rounder.
Yeah, I get on board with that. I kind of see him in the second round.
Yeah, I see him around the second round. That's a really popular sweet spot for him, I think.
Yeah, you have to get on board with him too because you got Aaron Rodgers throwing to him,
Yeah, exactly. And obviously this year, he looks healthy. He looks great. He came back from injury. Everybody's going to be buying on him and not selling.
All right, let's go over to the other side of the ball. I want you to say this with me, okay?
All right.
Eli Manning has been a below-average quarterback all year.
Eli Manning has been an
average quarterback all year. That's the truth.
That's the truth.
I mean, seriously, in no way, shape, or form, all aspects of his game have been below average.
Yeah. I think it's at this point right now, his play has actually hurt Odell Beckham. I think if Odell Beckham was in any other offense, I think that he could perform better than he is performing with the Giants. And that's saying a lot because he's had a really good year, but he could be doing better, I think.
Yeah, I don't think Odell Beckham will be the number one pick next year, but do you think that he could be the number one wide receiver off the board?
Yeah, I mean, he has to be in the conversation. He has to be in the conversation.
I mean, do you see any scenario where you're taking him over Antonio Brown?
I mean, that's tough, because, Martavius Bryant, assuming is all as well, you got to consider that. But at the same token, I still think I like Antonio Brown more than I like Odell Beckham. He didn't do a lot this year to separate himself. He started the year off with a lot of temper tantrums, and then he picked up his play at the end of the year. but I still don't think that he really, like, cemented himself like I'm better than Antonio Brown type of, thing this year.
I guess what it kind of comes down to is, what do you trust more? Do you trust Eli Manning's play, or do you trust Ben Roethlisberger's health? I guess that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and you know what the other thing too to remember is, Landry Jones hasn't necessarily been like a death sentence for Antonio Brown. He's still been getting peppered with targets even with Landry Jones.
I mean, I think, I don't know. It's really tough for me at this point. It's too early for me to say. But how do you see the Giants winning this game against Green Bay? Because we both picked Green Bay to win, but I mean, it's definitely possible that the Giants could win this game. Obviously, they're going to get it done with their defense. Maybe Paul Perkins has finally emerged, do you think Week 17 was just an outlier?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really have a lot to play for in Week 17 because, they all but clinched the playoff berth the week before. But, I hate to keep beating a dead horse here, but, they have to, let's get the run game more involved, because that's not really, New York's, state of play. They're a pass-heavy team, and they like to spread the ball around, to Victor Cruz, not Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard and all that. But they have to get the run game involved in some facet, and they have to be able to lead the clock and rely on at least a back, especially late in the fourth quarter. If they have the game in their hands, they got to get those key first downs. But yeah, the key obviously for New York to win this game is the defense, and Eli Manning's got to be smart. He can't throw picks, like he has pretty much all season.
I don't know if it was necessarily an outliner game, because he got like 20-something carries in that game. He was the first 100-yard rusher for them all season. And I think it had more to do with the fact that they wanted to stick it to their division rival to keep them out of the playoffs. I think that's the reason why they started all their starters. Another thing that we haven't even mentioned yet is how Green Bay, they get beat deep on the right side of the field a lot on defense. If they can get a matchup over there with Odell Beckham, and they could probably hit a long one with them, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, because I wasn't even going there with that conversation. But you brought up a really good point. That right side of the field has been very vulnerable for Green Bay, and and Odell Beckham, that's his signature move right there. So I totally agree with that.
See, you know what it seems like with me with this Giants offense is very, very inconsistent. It seems like they'll get like a 3-and-out, and then they'll get like a 20-yard drive, and then they have to punt the ball, then they'll get like another 3-and-out, and then out of nowhere, 60-yard touchdown. And then they'll go back to 3-and-out, 40-yard drive, have to punt the ball, then out of nowhere, another long touchdown. Doesn't it seem like that's kind of been their theme all year?
Yeah, pretty much. They've relied on those big plays, far too often, and that's a recipe for disaster in the playoffs. But it could also be a recipe for success, because, the 2 times they've won Super Bowls with Eli Manning, that's been their recipe, make big plays when big plays need to be made.
Yeah, I was reading an article on Reddit about Eli Manning and how he plays in the playoffs, and they said they kind of brought up a good point. But I mean, it's kind of it's an unpopular opinion. They said that playoff Eli Manning is a myth. That he necessarily hasn't played any better or worse in the playoffs than he has during the regular season. He's been inconsistent. He's been consistently inconsistent throughout his entire career, and at certain points during their Super Bowl runs is when he got hot. But he's also had 2 other playoff runs where they went one and done. So, I mean, really it's going to come down to, like, which Eli Manning is going to come and show up to this game. Is it going to be the inconsistent Eli Manning that we've seen all year, or is it going to be the red-hot Eli Manning that we've seen in the past?
Yeah. I think you're right. I can't make an argument about that. Yeah, it's going to be Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde.
I mean, with that being said, I do think this is going to be a close game. And I really think it's going to come down to who can run the ball, because I think it's going to be cold. Maybe it might be snowing. I didn't really check the injury report or the weather report. So I mean, I think someone's going to have to establish a run game in this one. With that being said, I got Green Bay winning 21-17.
Yeah, I would have.
They're going to win. They're going to win, but it's going to be ugly.
Yeah, I'd say 28-20 Green Bay, and simply for the fact that Ty Montgomery gets going early and often, and he becomes the X factor in this game, and he adds another element to this team because he can. He's a wide receiver too. You know, he's a wide receiver and a running back, so he can catch passes out of the backfield, and he can get it up the middle with these guys.
Now, assuming that Seattle wins this game against Detroit, the winner between the Giants and Green Bay will go on to play the Cowboys. Honestly, I think whoever wins this game might actually beat the Cowboys. I know the Cowboys actually beat Green Bay earlier in the season, but obviously they got swept by the Giants. I think that either team that wins this one will end up going to the NFC Championship. Actually, I did a poll on Twitter, and it seems like the Fifth Downers agree with us. I think last time I checked, I asked which divisional team will be one and done. 38% Dallas Cowboys was the leader last time I checked. So I agree with that, and I actually don't want to spend too much time on this. We're already on enough time as it is, but. Dallas to me has one and done team written all over them. I think that the first matchup they face this postseason is going to be their last. And it's not to mention I'm not going to take anything away from this Dallas team. They've been great all season. They're just young,
but they're young. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't have said any better. They're young and they got a ways to go. However, that being said, this team has Super Bowl champion eventually written all over them at some point. But I just don't think this season is their season.
And if I'm wrong about this, you have every right in the world to cuss me out. I'll take it. I'll accept it. I'll even say, you know what, I love you, man. All right. A little bit of station identification. We're part of the BS Podcast Network. You can. There's not only just fantasy football there. They also have all kinds of. It seems to me there's like a lot of weird podcasts about different shit. I've listened to a couple of them. They're pretty entertaining and funny, to say the least. You can find all their podcasts on www.bspodcastnetwork.com. If you want to look for us on there, we're on the gold tier. Another great way to find our shows. You can also find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spreaker. You can find us on Stitcher. I finally got that shit fixed. So please leave us a rate and review on our shows. Like I said, if you haven't done it already, please talk shit to your league mates. If you are the champion, it's only fitting.
It's only fitting. You have all the bragging rights right now. Talk as much shit as you can while you still have it.
And if you lost 3 championships this season, all the more reason to talk shit to them.
You know what? Because I'm coming for you next year, baby, and don't you step.
All right. That'll pretty much do it for episode 55. I would like to thank you, Fifth Downers, for tuning in to us all year. We will do a show next week on the divisional round. We just want to give you the most entertaining show as possible. Please stick with us. I know the fantasy football season's over, but the real part of the season is just beginning.
Exactly. Make or break, baby. We love you, Fifth Downers. Peace.
Peace out. All right. I like the way we did that show. I think it was both entertaining and we gave a little bit of foresight. I liked it.
I couldn't have said it any better, man. That was entertaining. It was fun to do, and I loved it, man. I drank a couple beers while I was doing it. I had a good time, and it was great.
Yeah, I drink a couple beers too, even though I have duty in the morning.
Hey, fuck it, man. Hey, that's kind of good though. If you wanted to fucking pound a little bit, I drank a whole 6-pack before I had duty one time, and I was like,
I'm about to finish this 6-pack.
Yeah, oh, that's for damn sure, my brother.